And the one thing I frequently is sometimes, depending on the level of sophistication of client, you've got to educate them a bit. So the thing I always caution them about is that outsourcing something, whatever it would be, doesn't relieve you of the responsibility of delivering results to your company. Because most of them are like, it's the your mess for less. So here's this bag of snakes, Paul, see ya. Don't tell me about it. You know, it's like, no, you're still responsible for delivering the results to the company. You just got a new partner.
I'm only saying, for the actual main part, you need people internally, even if it's mostly for hand-holding and keeping the base structure going. But when you look at software and what you need, you gotta look, then you start thinking, do we outsource this or bring this in-house? A lot of times it's good to outsource, but then you gotta figure out what you need. It might cost a lot more because you might need people.
Well, sometimes how you orchestrate it. I've had the most success by being selective about outsourcing. You don't outsource all of IT. You have a fundamental team of people you need to maintain the infrastructure. Okay, if you have a project come up, there's a good case. I've had, where we had a requirement for a very specialized software product, that if we had to do it internally, we would have had to hire people and everything.
So you're looking for the expertise.
You look for the expertise, somebody who's done that before, who can bring a lot of people with some experience in doing that to bear. You hire them to do the prototype, they do the first release, and then they support it through until you get it to a level where you're ready to take it back. That's been very successful. And the cost saving, it's a little hard, but the main thing you save is that time to market. Because if you had to go out and hire the people to do that,
train them, right?
And then they're not trained specifically in a particular application necessarily, where you could go to somebody who has people who've done this before, they can get you a prototype, they have a help desk that answers all the calls and everything for all your people till you get it to a level that it's ready for production, and then supporting that in production is a lot less arduous task.
It also frees up your internal staff, and that's also a hidden cost where you might outsource some functions, but you don't then, those functions internally are not reassigned other tasks.
Betsy, that's exactly the goal, but what I've seen in reality is just the opposite, in the sense that the outsourcing department usually loses a lot of jobs. They don't get recycled. They should,
Right.
but they don't, which is why there is this huge internal resistance saying that, are you sure, because what happened to him is going to happen to me, because it's you're trying out it there, and then it's going to progressively come to my department, So there's a huge concern, where what is management thinking versus, it's one of the things where you don't really get a lot of downdraft.
Right.
Where they may be the ones who really know what really should be outsourced.
Right.
But because of fear, they won't advance
your arms and mindset wrapped around all of the issues that you're going to face as you go down that path.
In the mid-90s, Washington Mutual was about ready to explode. They really were only in a few places, and they realized that they were going to go across the country and just explode. Well, there's no way they could economically or feasibly amass that many employees that quickly. So they outsourced pretty much all of IT to IBM.
Yes.
And I was there, and there was only 2 of us left who didn't go across to IBM. And it cost them more. They said right up front, it's going to cost us more. But strategically, the ability to reach out to IBM, they could instantly add on 200 people to a rollout.
So scalability.
That's where
Right.
strategic. So, like what you were saying, even if, there are times when it may double your cost, but it allows you to do it. Otherwise,
It allows you to scale up.
Right.
If you get in a situation where you have to scale down, not so easy, because you have contractual agreements, and that's one of the cases. What happens when Washington Mutual turns around and you don't need all of that capability?
And they brought it back in-house. And exactly what they did. They realized, okay, that it had served its purpose, and then they brought it back in-house.
I think that's, Sun did this, we outsourced all of IT, and they said they saved $100 million over 5 years. I think there's a lot of hidden costs that don't, that's the CIO level looking at it. And I think the other thing that's a big issue that we had was stability of the workforce, especially if they were outsourced to India, and it was so unstable, yes, they could get bodies, so what? They didn't have people that were experienced well enough, even if they were smart people, they didn't have any institutional knowledge, it just was constant churn. If you have a stable workforce like the idea maybe, where you have people that are, long-term.
For years.
Yeah, then I think that's something to look at when you decide outsourcing.
Or if when I was at Tandem in the late 70s, we had a lot of software development we did with Tata. That was unheard of then. But we had a group of professional programmers who were there. We didn't have school bus programmers. Guys who just graduated from school who had a couple programming courses and didn't like production code.
So what's the quality impact of that volatility
Yeah, and I
from
think,
your experience?
yeah, I think it was huge. And the only time we really got stability is when the market slowed down and people weren't rotating every, and we actually started having people come over for 6-9 months. Train them, send them back. Then when they went back, they actually started building an organization that actually.
And every indication is that it's probably going to get worse because there's the other geopolitical trend, right? The countries that we outsource to are also in mega growth rates, right, compared to us, right? So there's going to be domestic competition coming out for that. So the instability is probably going to get worse. Or you have to pay a premium.
And therefore your cost savings, right, will be diminished, right? Which at the end of the day then may mean, okay, I don't need to go over to a third party, I then come back and do it in-house because the return is so much smaller.
Well, because then you don't have the inherent costs in the logistics. And Russian programmers don't go home at 5 o'clock if they haven't finished what they wanted to do for that day. Indian programmers do, sorry.
Structure so that we can't drive our employees longer than a certain number of hours because they want us to follow US work rules, let's put it that way. And and we have very strong systems in place so that, quite frankly, they don't work more than what they're supposed to do because of the labor laws and things like that. Engineers who's willing to work 14-hour days, but we don't want them to work 14 hours. They burn out.
The quality of those last 3 hours of that day, if you were to bounce out, is not there.
Look at in China, you got Huawei, right, which is coming out of Cisco's heels. They have 180,000 employees, and here's what their standard work schedule is. They're in at 8, right? They get lunch from 11:30 to 2:30. In that lunch, they get 1 hour of nap time or tea time.
Siesta.
Then they don't go home till 8:30. So, but that's within a China domestic company, and that may be okay from the manufacturing schedule, right?
It's cultural.
But actually, one very specific customer as well basically say, we don't want you to drive the resources that you put on our projects like that. And they actually request that we provide monthly reports on so that we don't do that.
When it started to come in so much, control so much that I can't really do it as well as effectively. I need to outsource a place where they can manage the staff or whatever appropriately. Do you think that's a big impact?
Well, yeah, because, part of it is, I can't hire experienced people because I've got to have that rate. I can only pay them this, for working this many hours and everything. So we have to look at a cheaper hourly rate to try and accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, I think even if that becomes a problem, they have a solution, right? It's just the old Toyota Georgia model. If offshoring becomes a political thing, they'll bring the people here, and they'll construct a factory here, right?
And that's exactly what Toyota did.
Exactly. So that I don't think will solve it. I think what it is primarily what the gentleman said in terms of compete. You have to really compete to get that piece of work. It's not just based on price. You have to be able to do it better than the client. That really.
But that's the CIO's perspective. The CFO's perspective is cost.